going on here?
Well, we're occupying this land as a statement, and that statement is about the misappropriation of public funds in the times of serious recession and an economic meltdown that we're facing. We're seeing huge budget cuts to healthcare, to education, in the UK even to the police and the army, to social welfare, and we're saying, look, how much more can people take? There's so many young people becoming unemployed, the casualisation of the workforce, and no hope for so many people. At the same time, we're seeing trillions of dollars being given in trillions of dollars of taxpayer money to bail out private institutions, debt of private banks, and salary rises for top officials. So at the time that we didn't have that misappropriation of public funds and stimulated the economy through helping the people from the bottom up.
Yeah. Do you think that the unemployment rate is being affected by machines taking jobs? Lots of jobs Take and Save and stuff are just being replaced by machines and stuff. Do you think there's something to do with that?
Not really. I don't think that mechanisation of the workforce necessarily decreases jobs for people, because there's always more jobs running those machines and manufacturing the machines. There is a slowdown in demand, but we lose jobs in the public service simply from government budget cuts. That means that those people have less money to spend, which means that once again there's a flow-on effect of that people that work in retail and manufacturing have less jobs, and there's a general grinding down. So I'm a Keynesian in the sense that I think that the best way to stimulate the economy is through government spending into public programs. But I think environmental issues are also critical at the moment, and as we are in an environmental crisis, there is something going on that really needs to be brought to public attention. And one of them is the Mokonui River. It's on the west coast of the South Island. It's one of New Zealand's last remaining wild rivers. It's not polluted in any way, it's not irrigated in any way. And the resource consent has been given for Meridian Energy to build a dam on the river, which is 330 hectares of custodial forest over the river, which is not necessary when you think about how to reduce that energy consumption and not spend a huge amount of public money on building this dam either. We're also seeing Stockton, the creation of what would be the largest strip mine in New Zealand in one of our high conservation areas. It has great spotted kiwi and giant carnivorous snails. And it's a very special area, and we don't want to see that strip with coal exported to China as well, which will also precipitate climate change. So it's not just social issues, it's also the underlying environmental issues which are underpinning scarcity of resources for people as well.
Why are the government not looking into more wind turbines and solar powered energy? Because New Zealand has plenty of sun and plenty of wind.
That's a fair question. I mean, going on to environmental issues, I guess, and generation. So you mentioned a couple there, solar and wind. I mean, if they're localised structures, so you're powering maybe a small suburb, a few houses from a windmill or something, then that's really positive because that's local infrastructure. But large wind turbines require a lot of steel to mine. It's a big polluting process. It's expensive. It's not necessarily energy efficient. And it's the same with solar. Solar is still one of the most polluting manufacturing industries. So, really what we need to think about is how we can reduce the mass amount of energy consumption rather than how we're going to build more power plants.
I heard that places in LA, people aren't able to pay their mortgages, so the banks are kicking them out of their homes. But they have no one to put in those homes. There are hundreds of houses just empty, so there aren't lack of resources. Do you want to touch on that?
That's all foreclosures, and there's big legal battles going on at the moment in the states about the foreclosure issue. Foreclosures are obviously people losing their homes, terrible. But the mortgage issue shows how much people are actually in debt at the moment. You see people walking around, they've got suits, they look nice, they look like they're rich, but they're actually $500,000 in debt in the bank with their house. And when people lose their jobs in times of recession or their job gets casualised, they can no longer keep up with those payments, the bank confiscates their house. I think Detroit is really an interesting issue, especially in America, part of the Rust Belt, hugely affected by the foreclosures, hundreds of abandoned homes. Why a house in Detroit something like $4,000, $5,000 is that cheap? But what has actually been happening there is the local communities have been tearing down the houses and building gardens to feed themselves in localised communities, cooperative community gardening, to make sure that they feed themselves so that they have enough food supply, because there's also not the jobs of the people that have been living in Detroit. And I think that's a really positive response to things like foreclosure and scarcity of food supply.
Do you think the monetary system that the world's been running on for hundreds of years or thousands of years, do you think that's becoming redundant?
Well, you know, say thousands and hundreds of years, like how long has the modern monetary system been going, you know? I mean, where would you pick a date for that? I mean, you could say, well, was it when we got rid of the gold standard in the 50s and there was been, you know, money was linked to the intrinsic value of gold, you know, or was it before that when we privatised, where we got the right of banks to print money rather than government? You know, which I don't know exactly know when that was at some point in the 19th century. So, you know, when did the current monetary system become what it is now? It's been more of an evolutionary process, but one thing is for sure, it is entirely unsustainable. And this is what we're seeing now, because the interesting thing about the economy is a thing called derivatives. So derivatives is when you actually take out when you sell debt, for instance. So, you know, you get a mortgage on a house, the bank lends you that mortgage, and then they sell the mortgage based on the fact that you'll pay it back on the interest to somebody who buys that and then sells it on again. And this is what's happening with Greece at the moment, because there's trillions of dollars in derivatives on Greek debt, and so if the Greeks default on their debt, which they're going to have to because the country's ungovernable because of the riots, then all of a sudden all these trillions of dollars, which were based on speculation of the Greeks paying back their debt, will collapse and disappear from the economic system. So we are seeing the collapse of the monetary system, that's correct.
Oh, thank you very much. That's